if you like.
It just said that it got started again, so we're good to go now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I am here to talk to you. First, I just want to acknowledge the matrix too, because this is all about based on the work of the matrix. And I want to acknowledge that this process was developed by some of my colleagues many years ago, Jim and Jory Mansky, Jake Gottwals, and Jack Lehman, many years ago when they were all living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I remember when they were pulling this together, there were lots of conversations, there was lots of wonderment about it. And what they've created is really quite wonderful, a wonderful way of learning NVC and sort of gauging yourself within your knowledge of it. So I want to acknowledge that. And I think with that, I'll just jump in. So my job is to talk to you about requests. And I have to tell you that for me, it was, to me, becoming skilled at making requests is sort of graduate level NVC, I think. Because it's kind of, it sounds so easy. Well, just ask for what you want. But actually, being successful at it is actually much more complicated than that. And it takes a lot of courage sometimes to really ask for what we want. And so the purpose of it is it creates clarity with the people in our life about what we really want. And it actually creates clarity in ourselves about why we want it. And in order to make a request, I think we have to, first of all, start with some understanding of our needs. Otherwise, we're just asking people for stuff and it's not necessarily supporting us. Underneath it all, making requests, becoming skilled at it is empowering, like ultra empowering in our lives. It gives us a chance to start being really clear what we want and then set up an opportunity to begin receiving that. It's completely empowering. It's a step up in our lives from hoping that we get what we want or hoping that other people will bring to us what we want and actually stepping into our relationships and asking for it. It comes from sort of an underlying principle of NVC that everything someone does or says is in support of a need. All words, all actions are all in support of some beautiful, precious need. And that we want our needs to be met. We want all needs to matter. And we don't want our needs to be met at the expense of another. And we don't want the other person's need to be met without us as well. And so in a way, when we start making requests, we put ourselves on the table. If we want all needs to matter, we start to include ourselves in that list of all people that matter. And I think for many of us, when we first get started, we think we pay attention more to other people and what they want and what their needs are. And we sometimes forget what's important to us, what really matters to us. So that's where we're headed today in this next hour, to talk about this thing about requests. Why is it hard? And what can we do? And what are sort of the basic principles of it? So I'd love to hear from a couple of you because I'd love to just get a sense of who's on the line with me. Can you tell me what, in just a couple of words, very few words, because we don't have a lot of time. I'd love to hear if you have experience making requests and what's challenging for you, or what keeps you from making a request of others. I think we might have room for two very quick comments. So raise your hand if you would like to be someone to start talking. I'd love to hear from a couple of you because it would meet my own need for connection. And that's my first request of you. Go ahead, Holly, and then Priyanka.
So what's becoming more clear to me as I continue with this process of NVC is that I myself am recognizing that when I do my inner work of what I need, what what I need. And then I become very clear and confident about my needs. Then I feel ready to make the request, because with the request, I'm so clear that if they say no, or they cannot, or don't have the capacity, then I'm still okay. And that's it's when I'm not that confident that I try to make the request, that then it's coming out more like a demand. And so I truly have to be clear, and then I can, let go with whatever their answer is.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Holly. I see there are some comments in the chat, and I think others would relate to you. I think when I hear you say, when you get clear, what I think about is there's a couple of levels of clarity. One of them is, what are our needs? Because I think we might think, wow, I'd really like more love in my life, but yeah, but what would that look like? Like, what would somebody do to bring more love into your life if you really wanted that? So part of it is clarity. What is our need? And the other deeper level is, do I think I deserve that? Like when I have demand energy that you're speaking of, it's almost always related to some inner idea of shame, or this inner feeling of shame that I don't really deserve it. So therefore, I don't really think I should have it. And therefore, I don't really want to ask you for it. And if I do, I'm so sort of desperate to get it that it comes across as demand energy. And so I think a lot of the work in making a successful request is our own inner work, as you said, our own inner work. What are our needs? And for me, it took me quite a while to start to get clear on, yeah, but what am I really hungry for in my life that I'm not getting? A deeper layer of it is, and what's my part in that? So when I first came into NVC, I was just dying to be heard. I mean, it was such a deep, important need for me to be heard. And I wasn't seeing that happen in any of my relationships. And at one point I had to wake up and say, okay, is it even possible that all these other people are jerks and you're the only decent person? I mean, that's not even really possible, Mary. So what is it that you're doing, dear Mary, that's preventing you from being heard? Because you have a part in this. And I started watching myself, and I noticed that I was forever asking other people to talk about themselves. And why did I do that? Because that's what I was comfortable asking for. But it didn't actually meet my need for being heard. I got all kinds of information about other people. I'm not saying it's a bad request. It only is ineffective because my need was to be heard. So asking you what's going on with you isn't, there's a disconnect. So that was my part. So that's another level of clarity. Thank you, Holly. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Priyanka.
The challenge I face in making requests is that I'm not confident in my ability to frame the request in a way that my need will get met yet. So I'm always conscious about, oh, should I say it like that? Or how should I say it? How will that person take it? And that mental thing just stops me sometimes from making the request, because I'm so scared that I'll say something in a wrong way and the consequences won't be good.
Oh, I can so relate to this, Priyanka, and I bet everybody else, or maybe not everybody, but many people on the call can relate to this. Like, I don't really want to open my mouth unless I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a yes. But if that's what I'm focused on, then I might not ever actually ask for what I want. If the requirement is that the other person says yes, it will stop me in my tracks before I even get started. So I think there's a part of a real value to asking for what we want, just for ourselves, because it means we are stepping up into our lives. We're taking responsibility for our needs, and we are asking for what we want. There is value in just doing that. It's painful when people say, no, I'm not going to lie about that. It is painful. And we also don't know how people will react, and we're really not going to know how people react if we don't start making requests. So one of my techniques in the beginning was, so when I realized that I wanted to be heard, I thought, okay. So I started looking around and I realized, you know what? Yes, you really don't have, you're not heard in your life in almost anywhere. And that is exactly why I was so sort of desperate for it. So one thing I'm hoping you'll walk away with, if you notice a kind of desperation in you to meet a need, look around. My guess is there are lots of places where that particular need is not met in your life. You might think it's just this one person in front of you who you'd really like to get that need met from. But really, I think it's happening in lots of other places. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a level of desperation in you. And then the second thing I asked myself was, okay, of all these people in my life, who is the person that I think is most likely to receive me well if I ask this request to be heard? Who is most likely? And so I started asking a few people, and I noticed myself starting to fill up a little bit. That part of me, that desperation, was kind of going away a little bit because I was practicing how to ask to be heard. And secondly, I was being heard or not, or I was having some kind of experience of it, good or bad, doesn't really matter. I was having an experience of trying to get my need met, to be heard. And then in the process of that, I started to notice what requests were working better than others. I started to notice how incredibly uncomfortable I was to ask to be heard. And I started to understand, oh, this is why I don't get hurt in my relationships, because it is so painful for me to ask for that. And even today, after 20 years of teaching NVC, 20 plus years of teaching NVC, it's still one of my hardest requests to make. Would you tell me what you heard me say? It's such a simple request. It's not hard for everybody, but it's really hard for me. It's an act of vulnerability to make that request. And so I know that for me, that is an area that I have to pay attention to, a need that I need to sort of foster and love and be willing to step outside myself and do the hard thing to ask. So along the way, we become more skilled at asking for what we want. So the second thing I'm hoping you walk away with is, don't go to the person that you love the most or that you are the most hungry to get that need met that you're practicing. Go somewhere where you think it's going to be easier, where you think you have a better chance of meeting that need, whatever it is. Try it out. And somebody who maybe isn't your lifelong partner or your mom or dad, the people in your life who maybe matter the most to you, but maybe you struggle the most with, don't go there. Try it out with someone else and maybe a few other people that matter to you, but it's not going to be devastating if they say no. And then if they say no, start to practice. What do you do with that no? Do you just say okay and walk away? So I'd like to jump in with giving a few more principles. I'm hoping this is working for you so far. Would you raise your hand if this is valuable to you so far? Just give me a sense of what's happening in the room. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Sorry, could you repeat the two questions? I missed them and I really want to note them down. The two questions that you asked yourself. The first one, the second one was who in the world you would ask support from, I guess. And I missed the first one, so I'm a bit not concentrated.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question. I'll do my best. Sometimes I don't remember what I just said a few minutes ago, but I'll do my best. So what I'm wanting you to do is think about, where in the world are you likely to get this need met? Who is most likely to say yes to your need? Not that they will, but who is most likely? And try not to go to the person that you love the most, or the person that is most important to you in your life, or the person you are just so most wanting to get that need met. Because what I'm wanting to have happen for you, as it happened to me, was start to fill up that tank of, for me, it was being heard. Start to experience being heard, so I felt a little bit less desperate, a little bit less desperate. And then at that point, when I'm feeling more filled up, then go to the people who I'm most closest to, or the one that I most want to get that need met from. So there are a couple of things about requests that I want you to know. First of all, it's the fourth part of the four-part components of NVC. The first of which is observation. What are you seeing or hearing? No judgments, no evaluations. The second is, how do you feel? What are your feelings or emotions about it? The third is, what are your needs? Like, why does it even matter to you? What needs are affected for you in this situation? And the fourth is the request, not the least important part, actually, the finishing part of the entire four-step process. It finishes it because you start to say, okay, so this is what happened. This is how I feel about it. These are my needs. And now would you please? That's the part where you start to bring the person in and you clarify what it is that you want. So if I was to say to you, if you were in my family and I came home from work and the living room was, messier than I was enjoying, if I came in and said, okay, so, when I come home from work and I see underwear and socks and remnants of food in the living room, I feel frustrated because I'd really like more beauty and care about how we share our home. If I didn't make a request, I release all power, all responsibility for what happens next. And I put it entirely on the other person to figure it out. What does she want? Does she want me to pick it up? Do I have to pick it up now? Can I pick it up later? Is she mad at me? Have I done a bad thing? Do I defend myself against what's going on and start telling her all the reasons why this isn't about me or this isn't my fault? Do I just succumb and say, okay, I'll stop what I'm doing and just pick up the room? The other person has to figure out what we want. But if I ended it with, would you be open to picking up the living room before dinner tonight, or before you go to bed tonight, or did something happen in your life that prevented you from picking up the house before I came home? Or does it bother you to have the house messy, or is it really kind of okay for you? There's like any number of things I could ask of the other person. And by making the request, I clarify what it is that I want, or what it is I'm hoping for at the very least. Some of the important factors are the request needs to be directly related to the need. So remember my example, I had a need to be heard and I was forever asking you how you were doing. It's not a bad request, it just wasn't effective as it related to my need. So the request needs to be related to the need. It needs to be specific. Like, what do you want back? Not some broad thing like, I just want to be loved, or I just want you to respect me more. I want you to be a better worker. I want you to be kinder. These are all very general. There's millions of ways, literally millions of ways that one could show love, that one could show respect, that one could show caring. So of all that entire world of ways, what do you think would most meet your need? And can you ask it in a way that the other person actually gets what you want? Like if I said, I just want you to love me more, I don't think you would get what I'm actually asking for. I mean, you could maybe make up some stuff. You could decide, well, I guess I could bring her flowers more often, or I guess I could come home for work earlier, or, the other person is left kind of trying to figure it out. What do you want? So be specific with your request. Also consider who the other person is. So if you're with a person who isn't focused on feelings or needs, maybe that's a real struggle for them. Asking somebody to be more connected to their feelings, I think would be a really challenging thing for them to honestly and truthfully tell you, okay, I'll do that. But if what you're wanting is more connection with that person, is it possible that you can come up with another creative request of them that you think they could do? Like, I worked with a couple once, and the wife was very heart-centered and the husband was a scientist. So he was very head-centered, resolving problem-centered. And so the request she made of him was, would you just listen to me for 10 minutes when I come home from work and not offer a solution? He'd been offering solutions because that's his way of showing love. It wasn't a lack of love that he was offering. It was a solution that wasn't really working for her. Now, truth be told, he couldn't imagine why this was helpful to anybody. Why is it helpful just to talk about something for 10 minutes and not get advice or not have somebody help you work through it? For him, it was almost meaningless. But when it got down to it, he did it because he understood that for her, that was meaningful. So think about who's in front of you. Think about what could they do that would actually meet this need of mine for respect, or this need of mine for love, or this need of mine for care. So I'm just going to pause and look at the chat. I can see the chat is very active. So I'm just going to take a minute and look at it. I love this. In other words, I'd rather accept how everyone is and not request anything of others, believing they have a right to choose their own way of being, not really loving to ask them to do things different. Gosh, I don't think that's true. I definitely don't think, I hope that's not what you're hearing, because that's not what I'm wanting to be saying. It's not that I don't want to ask people to do things differently, but I want to consider who they are. I want to bring them with me. I don't want to get my needs met at another person's expense. And I don't want their needs to be met at my expense. So in a way, the creativity is, how can I meet my needs and also consider who the other person is? Also, I might have my favorite strategy for how I like to do things. I mean, I might actually, for me, a way of expressing love might be working in the garden with me. But I have to tell you that that is not such a fun thing for my spouse to do, work in the garden with me. So are there other ways that I could meet that need for love? Endless ways I could meet that need for love. Yeah. So from Berna, you are somewhat right, but think about a situation that the husband is always criticizing about everything in a violent language. I prefer to request for him to stop this violence. Yeah. I'm wondering if there's, first of all, that this is a really challenging situation that you're speaking to. It will be hard to really do justice for this in the amount of time we have. I can imagine it's extraordinarily painful to be on the other side of that, what you're describing, and scary, painful. So I can think of lots of work to be done in this situation. I'm wondering, if you ask your husband to stop acting in a violent way, does he stop acting in a violent way? And I think a lot of times we will ask the same thing over and over and get the same unacceptable results. So I guess, though, again, this is a much bigger situation than I'm giving an answer to. I'm really wanting to acknowledge this. Another way around it is asking something more specific of the person. I mean, he might literally not even register that what he's doing is violent. So was another request you could make of him. It could even be something like you could walk away from the situation if possible. Even go to the bathroom if possible, just to get away from it and try to calm yourself. It could be, could we talk about this later? Yeah, I'm just wanting to really acknowledge again that some of the things that are most important to us, safety, security, these things lots of times are not easy to get our needs met in certain relationships. Just looking through this. Okay, I'm not going to look at the chat anymore. It's hard for me to look at the chat and be focused on you. So many years ago, there was a survey. They surveyed 400 people who supported people in the Holocaust in ways, supported the Jewish people in the Holocaust. 400 people. Why did you help these people when you put your own life at risk and your own family at risk? Why on earth would you support them under those circumstances? And they were told, they learned two things, both of which were kind of surprising to the researchers. One of them was that they didn't have a sense of negative things happening to them if they didn't have a sense of negative consequences of actions. And so they actually didn't truly realize the level of danger they were in. The second one, the one that I think is relates to this class, is why did you put your life and limb in danger to support people in the Holocaust? The second most answer was because I was asked. Because I was asked. That gives me goosebumps every time I think about this, because I was asked. It is so painful for us to actually, can be so painful for us to actually imagine that somebody else would want to help us if we asked. Some people wouldn't, but lots of people would. So I'd like you to take a moment and I'd like you to think about something in your life that a need, specifically a need. It could be any kind of need like respect, love, support, compassion, understanding, consideration, beauty, any number of them that is really important for you in your life and you have a kind of hunger for it. So first of all, think about what that need might be. Mine was to be heard. Is there anybody who needs help in coming up with something? I see there's some things happening in the chat too that might be helpful as well. So Lori, I'm going to pair people up. Are you ready for that? Okay, so what I'd like you to do, I'm going to give you 15 minutes for this, 15 total minutes, Lori. And I want you to talk with your partner about the need that you want to get met. And I don't want you to tell a lot of story because there won't be time for it. So you could just go in and say, I really want to be heard. Or I really want more experience of love. Or I really want more consideration in my life. That's all you need to tell them. And I'd like the two of you to brainstorm what a request could be for that. Actually, I'd like you to brainstorm up to 5. Like if you really had this need for love, what are 5 things a person could do that would actually support that need for love? Not the whole big need for love that you have, not the desperate need for love, but really what could start to tap into that need for love for you? So I'll give you an example in my life about being heard. Mine could be, I could start to ask, would you tell me what you heard me say? Would you tell me what you heard that was important to me? Would you be okay just listening to me for the next 5 minutes without interrupting or giving any advice? Because I really feel like I just need to be heard. Would you be open to meeting me for lunch and listening to me for a bit? I've got something on my mind I'd like to work through, and I could use a friend. Those are right off the bat 4 ways I could start to meet that need for being heard. So that's what I'm asking you to do. You'll have 15 minutes total, about 7.5 minutes for each of you. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about it a bit more. All right. I will see you in just a few moments.
If you end up alone in a room, know that I'll notice that, and I'll be sending someone to be with you in just shortly. And
Thanks,
I'll open
Lori.
all the rooms.
Thanks, Lori.
I guess it was not sound to, was the sense assistant?
I am Lori. Do you need help,
Hi,
Lou?
Lori. Hi, Lori.
Hi. Good to see you.
I was sent to a room, but I was there by myself. I guess it's room 7. You can
Okay.
send me back, but there was nobody there.
Okay. I'm going to move you to a different room where I see someone.
Is there anybody at the 7?
Room 4 has got somebody in it.
Okay, thanks.
1, 2, 6. Just gonna have whiplash. Is there anybody in the room that needs help getting into a breakout pair? Just let me know if there's anyone here that wants to be put in for the second half of the breakouts. I see a few new people entering the room, and I'm just letting you know that we have breakout rooms that are going for another 2 minutes, and then everybody will be coming back. Welcome. So all of the breakout room people have had their 1-minute warning and will be joining us soon. I believe everyone is back, Mary.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Welcome back, everybody. So I want to spend the next couple of minutes and sort of offering a few specifics that I'd like you to remember. When we talk about a request, we talk about directing it specifically to the need. I think of needs as a general thing, a general category like love, support, connection, consideration. And any one of them can be met numerous ways. I mean, like countless ways can a need for love be met, or consideration or respect. So the need is general. It's actually, to me, connected to the abundance of the universe, to be honest with you. So that need for love, wow, that's huge. The request is specific. So of all the countless ways that I could meet that need for love, what is the thing I'd like to ask you to do to support me in that? Second thing I'd like you to think about is the need is also a beautiful part of you. So if you're wanting love, you can bring it. I saw somebody in the chat say, why are we always asking, well, I'm paraphrasing. Why are we always asking our needs to be met by other people? Actually, the reason I like to ask for that need for love to be met with in concert with other people, as an example, or any of my needs really, is I want to live interdependently. I really enjoy a flow, a back and forth flow in my relationships. But I also recognize that I am love and you are love. So I don't, it isn't that I have to get it from any particular person, but I enjoy it. I enjoy getting that need for love or respect or care met in my relationships. So there's something about having sort of a give and take with it. I'd like you to remember to consider this beautiful need that you were just talking about. Ask yourself, would you like other people to get that need met? There's a certain thing that happens in me when I recognize the real true beauty of the need. Of course, I want that need for respect, and I want that for everybody. There's a certain place in me when I can understand that. And remember to go to somebody who you think is likely to meet that need at first. Go to maybe a few people. Start to fill up that emotional tank of yours, that tank that's been empty for a while. And then once you feel yourself a little filled up, maybe a little less desperate, then go to the people who you're closest to and see if you can invite them into your world to help support you in meeting some of these needs. There was somebody else in the chat who wrote something about, sometimes I'm paraphrasing, sometimes I'm too emotional when I make a request of someone. I want to speak to that because I think that connects to that kind of desperation that I talked about earlier. So if I am if I have a need that hasn't had a chance to be expressed very well, like as I said before, mine was about being heard, then there's a kind of desperation that happens in me. And when I make the request, my emotion can be way bigger than is related to this particular situation. It's actually an indication to me how hungry I am to meet that need. And it's also an indication that it's bigger than this relationship. So at some point I realized, but if I don't ask the request because I'm afraid I'm too emotional, then I just stay in this pit of not supporting that need. And so I developed a way of asking for it. And it was first acknowledging that my feelings are big and probably bigger than the situation warrants. So I might start by saying, I have something to talk to you about, and I worry that my emotions are going to be way bigger than is appropriate for this situation. And I actually think the fact that I have such big emotions, it's bigger than even my relationship with you. So I'm wanting to just acknowledge that and hope that you will listen to me and be able to hear me, even though I have such big emotion attached to it. So it's a way of acknowledging, taking responsibility. Yeah, I have big emotions. This is something I haven't dealt with in other relationships, and it's coming up for me in a big way right now. And some of it's about you, but not all of it. It's about acknowledging that and then moving into the request. So I'm looking at the time. I am just see if I made any more notes here. When early on, when I first came in, I did a lot of work with Marshall Rosenberg, and he would talk about making a request being a gift of another person. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't honestly get that at the time. How is me making a request of you a gift to you? But I know it is today. I know it is today. It gives people a chance to support us. I have, for myself, had a lot of independence. I was proud of how self-sufficient I was. I was proud at how little I needed to ask other people for. And I was very lonely. And I had very little intimacy in my life at that time. I started to notice how much I really enjoy it when other people ask me for things. Like a friend just recently told me that she was struggling in her relationship, and what I talked to her about it was sweet, really sweet connection with her. Another friend was talking about she was in sort of her words, not mine, but she called it a shame spiral. And she asked if I could meet with her and one other friend, if the three of us could get together and allow her to express it. My partner asked me for things that I wouldn't necessarily, like last night, late at night, her idea was, let's go to the bed store and buy a new bed. And I'm like, really? I'm really tired. I really didn't want to go to the store at 8 o'clock last night. But when I heard about what was important to her about that and the needs that she might get met, we went to the bed store and we bought a bed. And it wasn't because I needed to do it or I should do it. It was because I wanted to support her needs for self-care and beauty. So with that, I think it is time for us to start to close. I want to remind you that this is a fundraiser for the Center for Nonviolent Communication. The center's been around for many years. It originally was Marshall Rosenberg's organization, and its purpose is to support the growth of NVC in the world. And by doing that, it gets to meet its own mission and desire for peace in the world and care and deepening relationships between people. And also it's in support of Jim Mansky, my dear friend Jim Mansky, who wrote the book Pathways to Nonviolent Communication. And so there's two ways that you can support CNVC and Jim. You can buy one of Jim's books, and you can also donate to CNVC, and Lori will put the links in the chat. All of the money for Jim's purchase of Jim's book goes to CNVC, so it's a 100% fundraiser. Everything is a fundraiser. If you buy a book from Jim, you get to donate to CNVC, and if you give an actual donation, you get to give to CNVC. And the other thing I want to do is tell you what's coming up next, and it's pretty fun for me that I get to introduce this next person. The next person up is Roger Sorrow. He lives here just a kind of more than a few miles away from me, but not that far, in a town called Santa Barbara here in Southern California. Roger, I've known Roger for many years. He's been around forever. I don't know how long ever is, but it's been a very long time. He was, I think, if I was going to say that there was like an initial group of NVC trainers and a second group and a third group, I would say Roger's probably in the first group. He's been around a very long time. Worked with Marshall Rosenberg for many, many years. I love Roger's energy, and I love the way he can have fun in his classes. And I love how he lives NVC in his life. And I've known him for many years, and it's really, really a pleasure that you get to work with him next. And his topic is beneficial regret, which if you're curious what that even means, I would say it's worth it to take the course. If you know what it means and you want to know more, definitely worth it to take Roger's course. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I've loved spending a little bit of my Saturday morning with you. And I also want to acknowledge Lori Delaney for being our blessed support person. Thank you, Lori. Also a good friend of mine here in Long Beach. And it's been fun to spend this time with you too, Lori. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll go out and make requests. I hope you'll have some experience of being fed back. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.